Captain Sarah Chen stepped off the transport shuttle and into the massive corridor of the Galactic Defense Station. The walls stretched high above her head, made of gleaming metal that reflected the bright lights running along the ceiling. Everything here was built for beings much larger than humans. Sarah had to crane her neck just to see the full height of the doorways. The corridor buzzed with activity. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past her, their various forms creating a strange parade of galactic life. Some walked on two legs like humans, while others slithered, floated, or moved on multiple limbs. Their voices created a constant hum of different languages and sounds that Sarah could not understand. Sarah adjusted the strap of her equipment bag on her shoulder. Inside was her personal sidearm, a standard Earth military pistol that had served her well through many years of service. The weapon was simple compared to what she saw other beings carrying. Their guns glowed with energy, hummed with power, and displayed holographic readouts. Some were so advanced they seemed to float beside their owners. She followed the signs toward the registration area, written in dozens of languages including English. The annual interspecies military championships brought together the best soldiers from 12 different worlds. Sarah was the first human ever invited to compete. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and most species still viewed humans as newcomers who had little to offer. As Sarah walked through the corridor, she noticed other beings staring at her. Some looked curious, others seemed amused. A few pointed at her small frame and whispered to their companions in languages she could not understand. Sarah kept her head high and continued walking. She had faced doubt before. Near the registration desk, a group of large reptilian beings stood discussing something in low voices. Their scales gleamed under the bright lights and their eyes were cold and calculating. Sarah recognized them as Draknari, a warrior species known throughout the galaxy for their military might. The largest of the group noticed Sarah approaching and stepped forward. General Vorthak was enormous even by Draknari standards. His scales were dark green with traces of gold that marked his high rank. When he stood at full height, his head nearly touched the ceiling. His eyes were yellow with vertical pupils that reminded Sarah of a snake. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. "So," General Vorthak said, looking down at Sarah from his great height, "Earth has sent a representative to our championships." His lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile among his species. "How interesting." Sarah looked up at the massive alien general and nodded politely. "General Vorthak, I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth Military Forces. I am honored to participate in the championships." General Vorthak's yellow eyes moved to the equipment bag on Sarah's shoulder. "And what weapon does Earth's finest warrior bring to compete with the galaxy's best?" His tone suggested he already knew the answer would amuse him. Sarah unzipped her bag and carefully removed her pistol. The weapon was made of dark metal with a simple design. It had no glowing parts, no floating components, and no holographic displays. Next to the advanced energy weapons carried by other competitors, it looked like something from a museum. The moment General Vorthak saw the pistol, he threw back his massive head and laughed. The sound was deep and booming, echoing through the corridor like thunder. Other beings stopped their conversations and turned to see what was so funny. Soon a small crowd had gathered around Sarah and the general. "By the stars," General Vorthak said between laughs. "That is your weapon? That ancient projectile thrower?" He gestured to one of his own soldiers, who was carrying a sleek energy rifle that hummed with power. "My soldiers carry weapons that can adjust their own targeting, calculate wind speed, and fire energy beams that never miss their mark. And you bring that?" Sarah felt her cheeks grow warm, but she kept her voice steady. "This weapon has served me well, General. It may look simple, but it is reliable and accurate." General Vorthak's laughter grew even louder. "Reliable? Accurate?" He turned to address the growing crowd of onlookers. "The human brings a weapon that uses explosives to throw small pieces of metal. While we have moved beyond such primitive methods centuries ago, Earth still clings to ancient technology." A spider-like being with multiple eyes scuttled forward. This was the registration officer, covered in fine hair and speaking with a voice that sounded like clicking insects. "Captain Chen," it said, "are you certain you wish to compete in the precision shooting category? The other contestants are using the most advanced weapons in the galaxy: computer-assisted targeting, plasma-based ammunition, auto-adjusting scopes. Your weapon appears to have none of these features." Sarah looked around at the crowd that had gathered. Some beings looked at her with pity, others with amusement. A few seemed genuinely curious about why a human would bring such an outdated weapon to a galactic competition. She could hear whispered conversations in various alien languages, and while she could not understand the words, the tone was clear. They thought she was either very brave or very foolish. "I understand the disadvantages," Sarah said, speaking loud enough for the crowd to hear. "But Earth's military has sent me here to represent our species' capabilities. This is the weapon I know best, and this is the weapon I choose to compete with." General Vorthek shook his massive head, still grinning with sharp teeth. "Human stubbornness is legendary throughout the galaxy, but this borders on madness. You will be competing against the finest marksmen from 12 worlds, using weapons that cost more than most starships. Your little metal thrower will be outmatched in every way." An officer from the Centaurian Republic stepped forward. His blue skin gleamed with natural oils, and his weapon floated beside him without any visible support. "Perhaps the human does not understand the level of competition here," he said in perfect English. "Last year's champion hit targets at distances your weapon cannot even reach. The precision required is beyond what manual aiming can achieve." Sarah nodded respectfully to the Centaurian. "I appreciate your concern, but I would like to try nonetheless." General Vorthak's amusement seemed to grow with each exchange. "Very well, little human. Register for the championship. It will be educational for your species to learn the difference between ancient methods and modern warfare. Perhaps next time, Earth will send a properly equipped soldier." The registration officer processed Sarah's information, its multiple eyes scanning her credentials with obvious doubt. "All participants must demonstrate basic weapon safety before competing," it announced. "Captain Chen, please show that your weapon is properly maintained and ready for competition use." Sarah expertly field-stripped her pistol, laying out each component with practiced precision. The crowd watched as she cleaned each part and reassembled the weapon with smooth, confident movements. Her hands moved without hesitation, showing years of familiarity with every spring, pin, and mechanism. "Interesting," murmured a voice from the crowd. "The human knows her weapon well." General Vorthak dismissed this observation with a wave of his clawed hand. "Knowing an inferior weapon well does not make it superior. Tomorrow, when the championships begin, we will see how far human determination can carry outdated technology." As the crowd began to disperse, Sarah holstered her pistol and completed her registration. She had expected doubt and criticism, but the level of amusement and dismissal still stung. Every species here seemed convinced that advanced technology was the only path to success. That evening, Sarah sat in her quarters cleaning her weapon once more. The pistol had been with her through countless training sessions and real combat situations. She knew every scratch on its surface, every slight variation in its balance. Tomorrow she would show the galaxy that sometimes the oldest methods were still the best methods. Outside her window, the stars of a dozen worlds twinkled in the darkness. Each one represented a civilization that had moved beyond what they considered primitive human technology. But Sarah smiled as she reassembled her pistol one final time. They would all learn something new tomorrow. The championship arena was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The massive dome stretched hundreds of meters in every direction, with seating for thousands of spectators from across the galaxy. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing competitor profiles and statistics in dozens of languages. The noise from the crowd was overwhelming, as beings from 12 different worlds cheered for their representatives. Sarah walked onto the competition floor with the other contestants. Each competitor looked confident and well-prepared. Their weapons gleamed with advanced technology, and many wore specialized gear that enhanced their natural abilities. Sarah, in her simple Earth military uniform and carrying her basic pistol, looked completely out of place. The arena's main screen displayed profiles of each competitor. When Sarah's image appeared, showing her small human frame next to the towering aliens, a wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Some spectators pointed at her picture and made comments in their native languages. Sarah could not understand their words, but their tone made their meaning clear. General Vorthak sat in the VIP section with other high-ranking military officers. He was speaking to a colleague, his deep voice carrying despite the crowd noise. "Watch carefully," he said. "This will be an excellent lesson in why primitive species should focus on learning from their betters rather than embarrassing themselves in public." The competition judge was a tall, thin being from the ethereal collective. Its voice echoed strangely as it spoke through a translation device. "Welcome to the annual Interspecies Military Championships. Today we test precision, skill, and the advancement of military technology from across the known galaxy. Our first event is standard target practice at varying distances. The targets were set at ranges from 50 meters to 300 meters. Each bullseye was barely larger than a coin at the furthest distance. The scoring system was precise, measuring not just hits, but exact placement within the target rings. Perfect scores were rare, even with the most advanced equipment. The first competitor was Lieutenant Zara from the Helix Nebula Systems. Her weapon was a masterpiece of engineering that floated beside her without any visible support. When she raised it to fire, holographic displays appeared in the air around her, showing wind speed, humidity levels, target distance, and optimal firing angles. The weapon's artificial intelligence made micro-adjustments automatically. Zara fired 5 shots in quick succession. Each energy beam was perfectly straight and left no visible trail. The targets lit up as the beams struck them, and the scores appeared instantly on the arena displays. 4 bullseyes and 1 shot just outside the center ring. The crowd cheered, appreciatively. Next came Commander Thrix from the Crystal Worlds. His weapon was built into his arm, replacing his natural limb with advanced targeting systems. When he aimed, his cybernetic eye glowed as it calculated the perfect shot. His weapon fired crystallized energy that never deviated from its path. 5 perfect bullseyes. The crowd roared approval. One by one, the competitors took their turns. Each demonstrated the pinnacle of their civilization's weapons technology: computer-assisted targeting, energy-based ammunition, automatic wind compensation, and artificial intelligence guidance systems. The scores were impressive, with most competitors achieving near-perfect accuracy. General Vorthak leaned forward in his seat as Sarah's turn approached. "This should be amusing," he said to his companion. "Let us see how far human stubbornness can carry her." Sarah walked to the firing line carrying only her simple pistol. Unlike the other weapons, it made no electronic sounds and displayed no holographic information. There were no floating components, no glowing indicators, and no artificial intelligence assistance. It was just metal, springs, and basic mechanical engineering. The arena fell unusually quiet as spectators waited to see what the human would do. Many had never seen such primitive technology in action. Some whispered questions about whether the weapon would even function properly in the arena's controlled environment. Sarah checked her weapon with practiced movements. She loaded her ammunition by hand, each bullet a simple piece of metal with a small explosive charge. The process looked painfully slow compared to the instant energy charging systems used by other competitors. She raised her pistol and took aim at the first target 50 meters away. Her stance was solid and balanced, developed through years of training on Earth's shooting ranges. She controlled her breathing, letting half the air out of her lungs before holding steady. Her fingers squeezed the trigger slowly and evenly. The gunshot was sharp and loud, completely different from the silent energy weapons used by other competitors. The sound echoed through the arena, causing some spectators to jump in surprise. A small puff of smoke drifted from the barrel of Sarah's pistol. The target displayed her score immediately. Perfect bullseye. A murmur ran through the crowd. Perhaps it was just luck. Sarah aimed at the 100-meter target. Again, she controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger with steady pressure. Another loud gunshot echoed through the arena. Another perfect bullseye. The crowd's murmur grew louder. The 150-meter target was next. Sarah's movements remained calm and deliberate. She made no adjustments to her weapon, relied on no computer assistance, and used no artificial intelligence. Just her eyes, her hands, and her years of experience. The third shot was another perfect hit. General Vorthak sat up straighter in his seat. His expression of amused confidence was beginning to change to something that looked more like interest. "Interesting," he muttered under his breath. At 200 meters, the target was barely visible to the naked eye. Other competitors had needed their advanced scopes and targeting systems to achieve hits at this distance. Sarah squinted slightly, made a tiny adjustment to her stance, and fired. The bullet struck the exact center of the target. The arena was now completely quiet except for the sound of Sarah's breathing and the mechanical action of her weapon. Even the commentators had stopped talking, watching in amazement as the human with the primitive gun matched the performance of the galaxy's most advanced weapon systems. The final target sat at 300 meters. At this distance, it appeared as a tiny dot even to enhanced alien vision. Sarah's pistol had no scope, no magnification system, and no targeting assistance. She would have to rely entirely on her natural eyesight and shooting skills. Sarah took her time with the final shot. She studied the target, felt the air movement in the arena, and adjusted her grip slightly. Her finger found the trigger, applied steady pressure, and fired her fifth shot. The target lit up with another perfect bullseye. The arena erupted in confused noise. Spectators from dozens of species talked excitedly among themselves, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The holographic display showed Sarah's score, 5 perfect shots matching the best performance of the day. General Vorthak stared at the display in disbelief. His reptilian features showed confusion and the first hints of respect. "How is this possible?" he asked aloud. "No targeting assistance, no computer guidance, no advanced ammunition. Just shooting?" The competition judge's ethereal voice echoed through the arena. "Captain Sarah Chen of Earth has achieved a perfect score in the standard target practice event. She advances to tomorrow's moving target challenge along with 7 other competitors." As Sarah walked off the firing line, other competitors watched her with new interest. What they had dismissed as primitive human technology had just performed, as well as their most advanced systems. A few of them approached her, asking questions about her weapon and her training methods. Sarah answered their questions politely, but kept her responses simple. She did not want to reveal too much about human training techniques, not yet. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she wanted to maintain whatever advantage her unexpectedness might provide. That evening, news of the human's performance spread throughout the station. Some dismissed it as beginner's luck, while others began to wonder if there was something about human capabilities that they had underestimated. General Vorthak spent the evening reviewing footage of Sarah's shooting, trying to understand how she had achieved such precision without any technological assistance. In her quarters, Sarah cleaned her pistol as she did every night. The weapon showed no signs of the day's use except for a slight warmth in the barrel. She smiled as she thought about tomorrow's challenges. The galaxy was beginning to notice that humans might have something valuable to offer after all. The second day of competition brought new challenges that would test every competitor's skills beyond simple target practice. The arena had been transformed overnight with moving target systems, weather generators, and lighting controls that could simulate any combat environment in the galaxy. Sarah arrived early to inspect the course. Mechanical targets moved on rails at different speeds and directions. Some popped up unexpectedly from hidden positions, while others swung back and forth like pendulums. The weather system could create wind, rain, snow, or even electrical storms that would interfere with both targeting systems and shooter concentration. Other competitors were also studying the setup, their advanced weapons already adapting to the new conditions. Sarah watched as their targeting computers began calculating movement patterns and environmental factors. Her simple pistol, of course, made no such preparations. It remained silent and unchanged, waiting for her skilled hands to guide it. General Vorthak entered the arena with a group of military observers from various worlds. Word of yesterday's performance had spread throughout the galactic military community, and many high-ranking officers had come to see the human who had matched their most advanced weapons with primitive technology. Today will be more revealing, General Vorthak announced to his companions. Moving targets and adverse conditions require split-second calculations that only advanced computers can handle accurately. The human's luck will not carry her through more complex challenges. The first event was moving targets at medium distance. Mechanical devices sent target discs flying through the air at various speeds and angles. Competitors had to track the targets and lead their shots perfectly to score hits. Most weapons systems automatically calculated the required aim adjustments. Lieutenant Commander Vex from the Andromedian Fleet went first. His weapon's holographic display showed predicted target paths in real time. The artificial intelligence tracked multiple targets simultaneously and highlighted the optimal moment to fire. His energy beam struck 4 out of 5 targets with precision. Captain Zenth of the Void Runners achieved similar results. Her cybernetic implants directly connected her nervous system to her weapon's targeting computer. She moved with inhuman speed and precision, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to engage targets faster than natural biology would permit. When Sarah's turn came, the arena grew quiet again. Spectators leaned forward to see how the human would handle targets moving too fast for manual tracking. Sarah loaded fresh ammunition and took her position at the firing line. The first target disc flew across her field of vision from left to right. Sarah's eyes tracked its movement while her brain calculated speed and trajectory without conscious thought. She fired once, and the target shattered. The crowd murmured appreciatively. More targets launched in rapid succession. Some flew straight. Others curved through the air and a few changed direction mid-flight using small thrusters. Sarah moved smoothly from target to target, her pistol barking repeatedly. Each shot found its mark with mechanical precision. The most impressive moment came when 2 targets crossed paths in mid-air. Advanced targeting systems typically struggled with such scenarios because their computers needed time to separate the overlapping signals. Sarah simply tracked both targets visually, fired twice in quick succession, and destroyed both discs before they completed their crossing pattern. Her final score matched the best performers once again. The crowd's reaction was no longer amusement, but genuine amazement. How could someone using such basic equipment compete with the galaxy's most sophisticated military technology? The afternoon brought the adverse weather challenge. Artificial rain began falling in the arena, followed by gusting winds that made targeting extremely difficult. Humidity levels rose and temperature dropped, creating conditions that interfered with many electronic systems. Several advanced weapons experienced targeting difficulties as their sensors struggled with the environmental interference. Computer systems that relied on precise environmental readings found themselves making incorrect calculations. Energy weapons that normally fired in perfectly straight lines began to drift slightly in the crosswinds. Sarah seemed completely unaffected by the conditions. She had trained in all kinds of weather on Earth, where soldiers had to be ready for any environment without relying on technology. Rain ran down her face as she aimed, but her hands remained steady. Wind pushed against her body, but she adjusted her stance naturally to compensate. Her shots continued to find their targets while other competitors began to struggle. The Centaurian officer's floating weapon system became confused by the multiple wind currents and started making overcorrections. A competitor from the Silicon Worlds found that moisture was interfering with his weapon's delicate electronics. By the end of the weather challenge, Sarah had not only maintained her perfect performance, but had actually improved relative to her competition. Several advanced systems had failed to adapt to the changing conditions, while her simple mechanical weapon continued to function exactly as designed. General Vorthak watched these events with growing interest and confusion. His military mind was struggling to accept what he was seeing. Every tactical principle he had learned suggested that advanced technology should dominate primitive methods, yet the human continued to prove this assumption wrong. The day's final challenge was night vision shooting. The arena lights dimmed until only starlight provided illumination. Most species had natural night vision superior to humans, and their weapons included thermal imaging and light amplification systems that made darkness meaningless. Sarah had no such advantages. Her eyes were purely human, adapted for daylight vision. Her weapon had no electronic enhancements, no thermal sensors, and no light amplification. She would have to rely entirely on her natural abilities in conditions where she was clearly disadvantaged. The targets were barely visible even to enhanced alien vision. They appeared as dark shapes moving against a slightly lighter background, requiring exceptional visual skills to track and engage successfully. Other competitors performed well using their night vision equipment. Thermal imaging highlighted warm targets against cool backgrounds. Light amplification made the dark arena appear as bright as day to their enhanced vision systems. Computer-assisted targeting ensured accurate shots even when organic eyes might struggle. Sarah took her position and waited for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. Humans had better dark adaptation than many species realized, though it took time for the process to complete. She stood quietly, letting her pupils dilate and her visual sensitivity increase naturally. When the first targets appeared, Sarah tracked them by movement rather than clear sight. Years of training had taught her to shoot by feel and instinct, when visual information was limited. Her shots were guided by tiny sound cues, subtle changes in air movement, and an almost supernatural awareness of her surroundings. Each shot found its target despite the challenging conditions. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the human matched the performance of night vision systems, using nothing but natural human senses and exceptional training. General Vorthak stood up from his seat, his massive frame tense with concentration. What he was witnessing challenged everything he thought he knew about human capabilities and the superiority of advanced technology. The third day of competition arrived with an atmosphere of electric excitement throughout the Galactic Defense Station. News of Sarah's incredible performance had spread far beyond the military community. Civilians from dozens of worlds had traveled to watch the human who was challenging centuries of technological advancement with nothing but skill and determination. The arena was packed beyond its normal capacity. Emergency seating had been added to accommodate the crowds, and holographic viewing areas allowed even more spectators to witness what many were calling the most remarkable competition in galactic history. News crews from every major world broadcast, live coverage to billions of viewers across the galaxy. General Vorthak had spent the previous evening reviewing every piece of footage from Sarah's performances. He had consulted with weapons experts, computer specialists, and military strategists, trying to understand how a human with primitive equipment could match the galaxy's most advanced military technology. None of them had satisfactory answers. The competition had been reduced to its final 8 participants. Each had proven themselves worthy of recognition, but only one would claim the championship trophy. Sarah found herself competing alongside the elite of galactic military forces, representing species that had conquered star systems and built galactic empires. Her closest competitor was Commander Zex-91 from the Nexus Collective, a being whose body had been almost entirely replaced with cybernetic enhancements. His targeting implants could track dozens of objects simultaneously. His reaction time had been boosted to inhuman levels, and neural processors in his brain calculated firing solutions faster than most computers. Commander Zex-91's weapon was equally impressive. It could reconfigure itself mid-shot based on changing conditions. Its ammunition was guided by microcomputers, and its targeting system was directly linked to orbital satellites for maximum precision. The weapon had cost more than most planetary defense systems and represented the pinnacle of military technology. The day's challenge was announced as combat simulation, designed to replicate real battlefield conditions as closely as possible. Targets would appear at random intervals and distances. Some would move unpredictably, others would be partially hidden behind cover, and all shots would need to be taken within extremely tight time limits. The course was a maze of obstacles, barriers, and hiding places. Targets could pop up from any direction at any moment, requiring constant alertness and lightning-fast reactions. The simulation included everything from close-range surprise attacks to long-distance precision shots, testing every aspect of marksmanship and combat awareness. Sarah walked through the course during the preparation period, mentally mapping the layout and identifying potential target locations. Unlike her competitors, she could not rely on motion sensors, heat detectors, or predictive algorithms to warn her of approaching targets. She would have to depend entirely on her human senses and combat instincts. The first competitor to attempt the course was Captain Thylex from the warrior clans of Rigel. His enhanced senses and powered armor gave him significant advantages in the simulated combat environment. Sensors built into his equipment detected targets before they became visible, and his weapon's rapid-fire capability allowed him to engage multiple enemies simultaneously. Captain Thylex completed the course with an impressive score, hitting most targets within the required time limits. His advanced equipment had warned him of approaching targets and guided his shots with computer precision. The crowd cheered as his final score appeared on the arena displays. Commander Zex-91's attempt was even more spectacular. His cybernetical enhancements made him move like a machine, turning and firing with mechanical precision. His weapon discharged guided projectiles that curved around obstacles to reach hidden targets. His performance seemed almost superhuman, which in many ways it was. When Sarah's turn came, the arena fell completely silent. Even the news commentators stopped talking, not wanting to miss any detail of what might be the most important moment in the competition's history. Sarah checked her weapon one final time, loaded fresh ammunition, and entered the combat course. The first target appeared without warning from behind a barrier to her left. Sarah spun and fired in one fluid motion, her body moving with the grace of years of combat training. The target fell before most spectators even realized it had appeared. More targets began emerging from concealment throughout the course. Some moved across open areas, others fired back with harmless laser beams to simulate return fire, and a few were positioned to test shooting through narrow openings or around obstacles. Sarah moved through the course like she had been born for combat. Her awareness seemed to extend beyond normal human senses, detecting targets by sound, air movement, and tiny visual cues that most beings would miss completely. She fired rapidly but never wastefully, each shot carefully aimed despite the speed of her movements. The most remarkable moment came when she encountered a scenario requiring shots through a series of narrow gaps, while targets moved at high speed. Behind partial cover, advanced targeting systems typically needed several seconds to calculate the complex angles and timing required for such shots. Sarah barely paused. She seemed to fire on pure instinct, her bullets threading through impossibly small openings to find their targets with mechanical precision. What should have been the most difficult challenge in the course became just another obstacle for her to overcome. Her final target was positioned at maximum range behind multiple barriers, requiring a shot that would test the absolute limits of both weapon and shooter capabilities. The target was barely visible, protected by cover that left only a tiny opening for a successful shot. Sarah took her time with this final challenge. She studied the target, felt the air currents in the EU arena, and made minute adjustments to her stance and grip. When she fired, the bullet traveled the full length of the course, passed through the narrow opening, and struck the center of the distant target. The arena remained silent for several long seconds after Sarah completed the course. Then, slowly, the crowd began to cheer. It started as scattered applause but quickly grew into a thunderous roar that shook the entire arena. Beings who had never seen a human before were standing and shouting their approval. The final scores appeared on the arena displays, and the cheering grew even louder. Sarah had not only completed the course successfully, she had achieved the highest score in the competition's history. Her performance exceeded the previous record by margins that seemed impossible. General Vorthak stood slowly from his seat, his expression showing a mixture of amazement and respect that had replaced his earlier amusement completely. He made his way down to the arena floor, pushing through crowds of excited spectators who were all trying to get closer to the remarkable human competitor. When he reached Sarah, the massive alien general stood quietly for a moment, studying the small human woman who had just redefined his understanding of what was possible in combat. Her simple weapon looked even more primitive next to his advanced military equipment, yet it had somehow achieved results that surpassed the galaxy's most sophisticated technology. Captain Chen. General Vorthak's voice carried a tone of deep respect that had been completely absent from their first meeting. I must ask you directly, how is this possible? Our most advanced targeting systems, our cybernetic enhancements, our artificial intelligence-guided weapons, none of them could match what you have accomplished here today. Sarah looked up at the towering general, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She could see genuine curiosity in his reptilian features, along with the kind of respect that could only be earned through demonstrated capability. "Would you like me to explain, General?" "The answer might surprise you." General Vorthak nodded slowly, his yellow eyes fixed on Sarah's face. Around them, the arena was still buzzing with excitement as spectators discussed what they had just witnessed. News crews pushed forward with their recording equipment, wanting to capture every word of what promised to be a historic conversation. "Please," the general said, his deep voice carrying genuine curiosity. "Explain to me how you achieved what our most advanced technology could not accomplish." Sarah set her pistol down on a nearby equipment table and turned to face the crowd of spectators, competitors, and officials who had gathered around them. She could see beings from dozens of different worlds, all waiting to hear her answer to the same question that had been puzzling the galaxy for 3 days. "General Vorthak," Sarah began, her voice clear and confident, "you asked me what technology Earth possesses that you have overlooked. The truth is, we have no advanced technology at all. What you have witnessed here is not the result of superior equipment but superior training." The general's scaled brow furrowed in confusion. "Training? But surely training has limits. No amount of practice can overcome the advantages of computer-assisted targeting and artificial intelligence guidance systems." Sarah smiled and picked up her weapon again, holding it so everyone could see its simple construction. "On Earth we have a saying, practice makes perfect. But that's not quite right. Perfect practice makes perfect performance. And humans have been practicing the art of marksmanship for thousands of years." She gestured to her uniform, where dozens of medals and ribbons were displayed across her chest. Each one told a story of competition, training, and achievement that the galactic community had never bothered to learn about. These badges represent a lifetime of dedication to mastering this skill. But more than that, they represent a culture that values individual excellence over technological shortcuts. Commander Zex-91 stepped forward, his cybernetic implants glowing softly as they processed this information. "But human biology has clear limitations. Your reaction times, your visual acuity, your computational abilities, all are inferior to enhanced systems. How do you overcome these disadvantages?" "You're right about our limitations," Sarah acknowledged. "Humans are not the strongest species, or the fastest, or the smartest. But we have something that your advanced civilizations seem to have forgotten. We learn to overcome our limitations instead of simply replacing them with technology." She pointed to her eyes. "These are completely natural human eyes, with no enhancements or modifications. But I have trained them to see things that most beings miss. I can detect tiny movements, read wind patterns by watching grass or dust, and track multiple targets simultaneously, using peripheral vision developed through years of practice." Sarah then tapped her temple. "This is a natural human brain, with no computer interfaces or artificial intelligence assistance. But it has been trained to make complex calculations without conscious thought. When I see a moving target, I don't need to calculate its speed and trajectory because my brain has done that calculation millions of times before. The knowledge is stored in my muscle memory and reflexes." The arena had grown completely quiet as beings from across the galaxy listened to this explanation of human capabilities they had never considered. General Vorthak leaned forward, fascinated despite himself. "But how is such training possible?" he asked. "Our military academies use the most advanced simulation systems and training programs available. How can primitive methods produce superior results?" Sarah's smile widened. "That's exactly the problem, General. Your simulation systems and training programs do the work for your soldiers instead of teaching them to do the work themselves. When I was 5 years old, my father taught me to shoot with a simple rifle at tin cans in our backyard. By the time I was 10, I was competing in local shooting competitions." She began walking around the arena, gesturing as she spoke. "Every day for the past 25 years, I have practiced with this weapon or ones like it. Not in simulations, not with computer assistance, but with real guns firing real bullets at real targets in real conditions. Rain, snow, wind, heat, cold, day, night. I have trained in every possible environment." During my military service, I have fired over 2 million rounds of ammunition in training and combat. Each shot taught me something new about wind drift, bullet drop, target movement, and environmental factors. This knowledge became part of me, built into my reflexes and instincts through constant repetition. Commander Zex-91's cybernetic processors hummed as they analyzed this information. 2 million rounds? That level of ammunition expenditure would be prohibitively expensive for most military forces. Expensive in credits, perhaps, Sarah agreed. But human ammunition is simple and cheap to manufacture. We invest our resources in training our soldiers, rather than building more complex equipment. A human marksman represents decades of training and experience. Your soldiers represent the most advanced technology money can buy, but they lack the individual skills that can only be developed through practice. General Vorthak was beginning to understand. So when you face a difficult shot, you are not calculating the solution. You are remembering solutions from thousands of similar shots you have made before. Exactly, Sarah said enthusiastically. When that target appeared from behind cover today, I didn't think about lead time and trajectory. My hands moved automatically to the correct position because they had made that same movement countless times in practice. My brain processed the visual information and adjusted my aim without conscious effort because it had learned to recognize those patterns through repetition. She held up her weapon again. This pistol has been with me for 8 years. I know exactly how it feels when it fires, how the recoil affects my aim, how environmental conditions change its performance. It is not just a tool to me, it is an extension of my body. I can compensate for its mechanical variations automatically because I have learned its individual characteristics through constant use. An officer from the Crystal Worlds stepped forward. But surely there are limits to what organic training can achieve. Our computer systems can process information and make adjustments faster than biological reflexes. You're absolutely right, Sarah admitted. Your computers are faster and more precise than human reflexes, but they are also predictable and limited by their programming. When conditions change in unexpected ways, they need time to analyze and adapt. Human intuition can respond to situations that no computer has been programmed to handle. She pointed to the combat course she had just completed. Several of those targets appeared in positions and timing patterns that were outside normal parameters. Computer systems would have needed time to analyze these unusual situations. But human experience recognizes similar patterns from completely different contexts and adapts instantly. Furthermore, Sarah continued, your advanced systems make your soldiers dependent on technology. When equipment fails or malfunctions, they lose most of their capability. Human skills remain constant regardless of equipment status. This pistol could jam, run out of ammunition, or break completely, and I could pick up any similar weapon and continue fighting effectively. General Vorthak was nodding slowly as he began to grasp the full implications of what Sarah was explaining. You are saying that by making our soldiers more dependent on technology, we have actually made them weaker. Overall, not weaker, General, but more limited, Sarah clarified. Your soldiers are extremely capable within the parameters their equipment was designed to handle, but they struggle when conditions exceed those parameters or when their technology fails. She gestured to the arena around them. This competition tested skills in controlled conditions that favor technological solutions. But real combat is chaotic and unpredictable. Equipment breaks, power systems fail, and computer programs encounter situations they were not designed to handle. In those moments, individual skill and human adaptability become decisive advantages. The crowd of spectators was absorbing this information with obvious fascination. Many had never considered that primitive methods might offer advantages over advanced technology in certain situations. General Vorthak stood quietly for several moments, processing everything he had learned. When he spoke again, his voice carried a tone of deep respect and something that might have been humility. Captain Chen, I owe you and your species an apology. I dismissed human capabilities as primitive and inferior when I should have recognized them as refined and perfected through centuries of dedicated practice. You have taught me that advancement is not always about building better tools, but about becoming more skilled with the tools we have. He extended one massive clawed hand toward Sarah. Would you be willing to work with our military academies? To develop training programs that combine our technology with human training methods? I believe we could learn much from each other. Sarah shook the general's hand firmly. I would be honored, General. Earth has always believed that sharing knowledge makes everyone stronger. As the crowd began to disperse, many competitors and officials approached Sarah with questions about human training techniques. Word was already spreading throughout the galaxy about the remarkable human who had proven that sometimes the oldest methods were still the best methods. As the crowd began to disperse, many competitors and officials approached Sarah with questions about human training techniques. Word was already spreading throughout the galaxy about the remarkable human who had proven that sometimes the oldest methods were still the best methods. The championship trophy was presented to Sarah in a ceremony that was broadcast to billions of viewers across dozens of worlds. But more important than the trophy was the respect she had earned for humanity and the recognition that Earth had valuable contributions to make to the galactic community. That night, as Sarah cleaned her pistol one final time, she reflected on how much had changed in just 3 days. The galaxy now knew that humans were not primitive newcomers to be dismissed, but skilled beings with unique capabilities developed through dedication and practice. The simple weapon that General Vorthak had mocked as an ancient relic had become a symbol of human determination and excellence, and Sarah's record-breaking performance would inspire a new generation of galactic soldiers to value individual skill as much as advanced technology. Outside her window, the stars of a dozen worlds twinkled in the darkness, but now they represented civilizations that respected humanity as equals rather than dismissing them as primitives. It had been a very good day for the human race.